If you've ever spent hours rendering the perfect iris or the delicate curve of an eyelash, only to pull back and realize the entire face looks like it's melting, you've hit the detail trap. Beginners often struggle because the human brain is hardwired to see things. We look at a person and see eyes, a nose, or a mouth. When we draw, we instinctively replicate specific features rather than the volumes they sit on. Jumping straight to surface details makes it almost impossible to maintain correct proportions. In a complex pose, those beautifully rendered features end up floating in space, disconnected from the structural reality of the head. Look at how John Singer Sargent handles a figure. From a distance, she looks alive, tangible. But move closer to the dress. There are no individual threads or intricate lace patterns. It's a collection of simple, confident, blocky shapes. The problem isn't just with shapes, it's also how we see light. Many artists treat the value scale like an all-you-can-eat buffet, using every shade of gray in a single area, which only creates a muddy, confusing image. Capturing a sense of three-dimensional form requires us to ignore the surface and build our work on two concepts: shape blocking and a three-value system. Realism is the result of managing the underlying geometry and light with total discipline. If those aren't right, no amount of microscopic detail can save the drawing. To block in a subject is to strip away the complexity and develop it using only simple, general, blocky shapes. This process intentionally slows you down. It forces you to address structural issues and basic proportions before the details can become a distraction. Even the human face can be reduced to these planar structures. By identifying the front plane, the side of the head, and the midplanes that connect them, you create a solid map of the skull's volume. This mapping is critical because standard rules of proportion vanish when a subject is foreshortened. When the head is tilted backward, blocking in keeps you grounded. You aren't remembering where features go. You're just observing flat shapes from your perspective. This takes much of the intimidation out of a complex reference. By focusing on simple masses first, you can measure how one shape relates to another without getting lost in the anatomy. When you treat the subject as a collection of simple volumes, you ensure the drawing has the structural integrity it needs to look real. Once the shapes are established, we turn to the light. The primary goal here is to keep your light and shadow values completely separate. We start with the average shadow, merging every form and cast shadow into a unified dark shape. Next, the average light fills planes pointing toward the source. Finally, the halftone bridges the gap. Halftones belong to the light family and stay separate from the shadows. Restricting an image to just these three values maximizes the sense of three-dimensional depth, creating a clear statement of form before any rendering begins. To see this in practice, we can apply both techniques to a complex portrait, like this photograph of a bearded man in a flat cap. We start by looking past the hundreds of individual values in the photo. We deliberately ignore the texture of the beard and the wrinkles in the skin to find the underlying blocky planes. Using a large brush and no preliminary line drawing, we lay down the shapes. We are searching for that overall statement of how the planes of the face interact with the light. As the unified shadows meet the light and the halftones bridge the gap, the image suddenly gains a sense of volume. The 3D form becomes undeniable. There's a cognitive paradox at work here. By simplifying the visual information and deleting the minor details, we actually make it easier for the viewer to perceive the subject as a solid, real object. This is what the playwright August Wilson meant when he said, "The simpler you say it, the more eloquent it is." Details are often just noise. When you prioritize the structure of your shapes and the clarity of your values, you give the brain exactly what it needs to perceive reality, and the viewer will fill in the rest.